Welcome to the Not Superheroes, Just Dads podcast. No, we can't fly. No, we can't shoot lasers or pick up giant buildings. But what we can do is help set the foundations for our families, be presents for our kids, and come back generational cycles. On this podcast, we dive into everything dad related, from the struggles we deal with as fathers to what our favorite thing to barbecue is. And hello, I am Sean Laurie. And today, guys, I am so excited because I got my boy, Osa. Is that how you say your actual name?
Osahan, yes, sir.
Osahan. Osahan. Okay. Osahan. I'm gonna just call you Osa though, because I don't want to mess
That's
it
cool.
up.
I get that's probably been one of the top three nicknames for me throughout my life, so you're good.
Okay. Okay. I was just making sure, man. And before we start, I know you just you have two sons, right?
Say that again, bro.
I said before we start, I think you have two sons. Did
Yeah,
I
I got
remember?
two, and
Two
there
sons.
goes one
Oh,
right there
well,
in the
you
background.
you
Yeah,
hearing
I got
right
two.
now in the background getting turned up.
Yep.
Okay, so I would ask. I want to do a little icebreaker. So my icebreaker for you is what was what was the experience? What was the difference between your first son being born and the second?
Oh, so there was this commonality, I'll say this, between both because I had both of them basically in the pandemic. So
Yeah.
my oldest was born in the heat of 2020. I mean, the week before the election in 2020. So that was different in terms of the just precautions with all of that. I know they say that with the first kid you're super careful with everything and all of that, and that was to a degree. I think our second, we had him at the tail end of the pandemic. Things were starting to open up a little bit, but I think with both experiences, what was cool is it was just my wife and I in the delivery room with the hospital staff. So to
Okay.
have that space where it's just us and we're just kind of like taking it all in without all the outside noise, without, we love our parents, but parents saying, hey, you should do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Like, not just to kind of take it in ourselves. And then I think just kind of watching them grow, they're less than 2 years apart. Was it 20? I think 20 months apart. And so just oldest is three, middle one is going to be two this year, and so just kind of watching actually a lot of similarities between them.
Yeah.
I would say if you took me and split me in half and recreated a totally different human, one part would be my oldest and the other part would be my youngest. So it's
Yeah.
been, yeah, it's been interesting watching that journey of the two of them. I joke around, my oldest is probably about 10 shades lighter than me, so I'm gonna have to, take ID with me to pick him up from school. And the youngest, he's boy, chocolatey. But the light skinned one, he thinks he's chocolate too. So
You want to be like daddy, man. You want to be like dad, you know?
that's it. That's it.
That's it,
Yeah.
man. That's funny, man. So, um, I know you're actually Nigerian, right?
Yes, sir.
So, I wanted to ask you, like, how was that for you growing up? What was like the difference, I guess, or maybe it was regular for you, but how was that for you?
Hmm. Um. Wow. So I think I mentioned this to you offline, and I mean you know this because you and I rap. For those of y'all who don't know, me and Sean are one of a handful of Black Minnesota Vikings fans you'll come across. We're
Facts.
we're originally Cali folk. Don't ask how it happened. Just know it's skull all day. Okay. No, but but with that though, I mentioned to you offline, my parents weren't, I think, traditional Nigerian immigrant parents. I have people ask me all the time, like, dang, like your parents cool with you having a Hispanic wife? Yeah, why? Like, because we just used to, you got to keep it in the culture and all of that. No, they're cool. My parents told me and my brother growing up, like, we know that you guys are going to be the first generation to marry outside of our ethnic group, and that's right now they're one for two on that. We'll see what happens with my little brother. He was in a long-term relationship with a oh, his girl was half Hispanic too at one point. So, but overall, I think the I very much lived in a tension between two worlds growing up. So on the one hand, I'd even say like a three-way tension. On the one hand, um, growing up in a space where my parents, yes, they came over from this country, had to hustle, had to grind, do all of that. And so there's certain expectations they had that were different than what I'd see with all my friends who were, families who've been in this country for years. Most of the schools I went to, I was one of the few, black kids in any of my classes. And so with that comes, of course, like that double consciousness, like W.E.B. Du Bois talked about. I'm sorry, not W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. And so dealing with that, and I think wrestling with the notion of being ashamed, not just of my blackness at times, but also of my like Nigerianness at times. And then not being black enough for black folks. And so dealing with all of that, and I think one thing my parents instilled in me that helped with all of that is just being proud of being you. Like, they didn't make us go super ultra like Nigerian all day. They wanted to make sure we were citizens of the world and were able to be comfortable and to be positive and to be light in any space that we walked into. So I think that's a brief
That's
shout
that's
out to.
dope. That's dope. So is it because I do like what you were sharing as far as I know with the culture they don't play with certain things. So my question to you is when it did come to like school because right a lot of times like Nigerian, Ethiopian like hey you better have a 3.5 which is nothing wrong with that right but was it one of those things where they constantly pushed education or pushed certain things because like you said they came they came to this country and they want to make a better life for you and your siblings and things like that right so was it one of those things at times where like you said it was that battle was it a struggle at times because I don't know I'm just more so asking was it a struggle though at times where you're just like man I'm not really worried about that I'm just trying to have a good time or hang out with
So I mean, in terms of expectations, yeah, there was very much like I remember coming home with straight A's. And like, yeah, I got straight A's, and it's like, okay, like, good, that's what you're supposed to do, you know. And I think part of that contributed to, we talking about parenting like our parents. One of the challenges that for me with that was okay, that's what's expected, but can I still get like a good job? Like at least get a A, like that's good, instead of just, well, that's just what's expected. So like go back to doing business as usual. But then you come down on me hard if I gotta be in this particular class. Now I understand if, for example, I'm slacking off in a class and you know my potential, you know what I can do, so you're on me to step it up. But at least praise when like praise is due and, correct when it's not. And so there was that challenge, and that is a for real challenge. I'd say I think I've met folks from all over the continent, and all over the African continent. And even right now, it's one of my endeavors is I'm a youth and young adults pastor for a church that is predominantly Arabic speaking. Most of the folks are from Egypt, and so that's like I watch that struggle with a lot of the students who's they're like high achievers. And if there's any sort of sense of them slacking off, like you see the check that's coming. You see, ooh, mom and dad are not going to be happy. So yeah, I think there was an expectation of excellence and there is a high value and priority on school. However, when it came to college, my parents, I think, maybe deviated a little bit than what you would expect from most Nigerian parents. And their thing was, listen, like either you go to school or you work, you find what your thing is, and we'll help you with that. If you decide you want to go to school, like we'll help cut the check for that. But you
my
find what your thing is and you do it. Just do something. We don't want you out here slagging off and bumming around in society.
That's what's up, man. So then, do you catch like you said, because being seeing the youth and they're actually dealing with some of the things you kind of dealt with somewhat growing up, right? Just having that high standard, which is nothing wrong with it, but it's sometimes like you say, just you want some of that affirmation when you meet those certain standards, right? So, um, do you ever see it where as they grow up or maybe people they do that same pattern that they didn't like and is that something that obviously your boys are younger but is that something that are you going to do the same for them as they get older or how are you going to approach school for them
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you asked that. And kind of what sparked the thought behind I think this conversation we're having today. When you hit me up, I was like, "Ooh, I feel like a mosquito in a nudist colony. There's so many directions we can go with this." But I just recently had a conversation with my mom, and she was talking to me about some things, and like, "Oh, I think you should do this with your kids," and da da da. And I was like, "Well, I already do this, but also like, I'm not gonna raise my kids the way that you raised me."
Mm,
And I said it one part as I think I did a little say a little bit as a dig, but also it was a like, hey, I just want you to know that I'm going to do the work that maybe you didn't do, and that's okay. Like, I don't
yeah.
think there's anything wrong with that, because what I heard, I forget who I heard say this, a favorite thinker of mine, their name will come to me, but she had said, hey, like, don't parent from your trauma, right?
Mm,
And so it is a conscious effort every day to say, on the one hand, yes, I value that excellence. So if I look at my children, I'm like, hey, if you want to go to school, cool, like do that. But if you don't want to, like, I'm going to help encourage and foster whatever that is in you that you want to do. I'm, that's what it was. My parents were working on their living trust, and so there's a certain amount of money that they've set aside for my kids to have access to when they turn 18. And so my mom was like, "Well, what do you want to do with that money for them?" And I said, "If they want to go to school, cool. If they want to jump into go the entrepreneurship route, I'll encourage that as well." And my mom kind of looked at me sideways, like, "Well, they should just go to school. Like, yes, they can have their own business, but why can't they go to school too?" And I was like, that's fine. But what happens if they start school and they get a really dope internship and the company wants to keep them on? And they're like, you know what, deuces, like, I'm done with this school thing. I'll wholeheartedly encourage that. But school's not for everybody. My dad's a
mm.
college professor. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and my dad will tell you all day, school's not for everybody. So I think there's that tension of, yeah, there are some best practices and things that I saw that was good in the way my parents raised us and some of those patterns that I'll pass on to my kids. But also there's some stuff where I'm like, nah, that wasn't healthy, and I know that didn't come from a healthy place, and you maybe didn't realize it, mom and dad, that that didn't come from a healthy place. But like I saw do they still call them tweets now that it's this X situation? I
I
don't know.
call it tweets, man. It's I
Okay,
just
yeah,
call it
yeah,
tweets. It's easier.
yeah. The mama called it Twitter. I'm gonna call him Twitter.
Yeah.
Uh, but I saw a tweet uh, towards the end of last year by a Nigerian girl, and she said, "Our parents' job was to survive. Now our job is to thrive and to do the work of healing that they couldn't do."
Mm,
And so that like that's my focus is, man, what does it look like to do the work of healing that my parents didn't have the time to do? And to also push them in the direction now, even though my parents are getting older, hey, even at your age, you can still heal from some of those things and you don't have to continue in some of those patterns. So yeah, doing that work of healing is hard. And if we don't do the work, then by default, we're gonna not by default, but we will default to our default setting, and that is how we were raised, and we'll pass that on to
mm.
our children.
That's real. That's real good. Do you ever? Obviously, your kids are still small, but do you ever catch yourself either doing something or saying something that maybe your parents said or your dad said? You like, wait, hold on, that sound familiar. Like, do you ever? Because I know for me, I'll catch myself. So it's funny. Like I've shared this before. Like growing up, I couldn't see my dad like that all the time. Just different situations, like I said, part time dad in a sense, right? So, but there, when he would address me and my brother, he would always say boy, like not racist boy, but boy as far as like boy, get over here, right? So, it's funny because I get on my sons at times, and my wife pointed out like, and I didn't realize it because she's like, why when you say it, you put emphasis on it? Like I'll be like, boy, like boy, get over here, right? So something like that, and I'm like, dang, like I mean that's what my dad did, like just little small things like that. So do you ever catch yourself just either saying something or doing something where you like, dang, my parents did the exact same thing, and I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that I'm basically just because I was around them so much, right, growing up with them, I didn't realize I would be doing the same thing.
Yeah, So I am, I think the older I get, for sure turning into my dad. I used to say it all the time where I was like, I'm not gonna be like my dad, forget that. And I remember one day I was at an event, it was a college graduation, and I happened to be sitting in the row behind my dad. And my wife and I were dating at the time. And I'm just sitting there minding my business, paying attention to the commencement speaker. And my wife taps me on the shoulder and shows me a picture. She had taken a picture of me and my dad. We were sitting, like I said, row in between each other, and we were sitting in the exact same pose. Not even like, not even thinking about it, just that's just the same pose, right? One thing that I would say I do like my dad, and that I didn't think, oh man, there's no way I'm gonna do that. I think it's just my wife says everything. She right here ear hustling. But I would say for sure the way I like address my sons. My
Yeah.
dad always addressed us as son, 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 son. So I always address my boys as son. Um, and it's especially when like I know I'm about to like maybe go nuclear on them. It's there's a little there's that calm before the storm, like son. Come on now. I'd say that's definitely one mannerism.
That's
Um,
funny.
I I think the other thing, and I think it's more so just an emotional response,
Hmm.
is my dad had a temper, his dad had a temper, and
Mm,
I for sure had a temper for the longest time.
for
I
real.
once again did the work to heal, but like they say, there's two things as an adult that will for sure bring out like the worst of you: marriage and parenting. So
Yes.
that for
Facts.
sure, like these kids have taken me to places that I'm like, I thought I was cool on that. No, okay, okay. And so my dad was the type where if he when he erupted, I mean, he would erupt. And so, I mean, I think probably the most common like expression of that from my dad would be like the hand slam on the table. When dad
Mm,
slams the hand on the table, nah, doc, don't, just run. Just head the opposite
yeah.
direction. You know it's about to be bad. And so that's the same thing. But seeing the look of terror and fear in my kids' eyes when I do that has now put me in a position where when I know I'm about to go to that place and I know the hand slam is coming, I'm like, let me just sit on my hand. Like literally sit on my hand so I don't go in.
Mm. No, that's good. Yeah, definitely. Like you said, just trying to make sure because I'm very conscious of. So, for example, for me, excuse me, like I'm very conscious of giving sure my kids have affirmation constantly. Because growing up, I felt like I didn't have that, right? And so I had to work up to be the confident person that I am now. So I make sure I'm constantly, and even if it's one of those things where at times, it might come off like they feeling themselves too much. I'm like, I'd rather you be that way and I can help you scale back than try to build it up. You know what I mean? And so I'm very, very conscious of that, man, making sure that I pour into not that my mom didn't pour into me, but it was just one of those things where I just felt like I guess I wasn't enough or I doubted myself, or there was times too where I'm conscious of that as well where I felt like the black sheep of the family, right, at times. And so just making sure that anything that my child does, like I celebrate that. Oh man, you drew that. That's amazing. Oh man, okay, yeah, look at you. You're an amazing dancer, right? Or my son, right, who plays basketball. Hey, you're doing a great job, right? Even though that's a weird balance at times because I coach him, so it's like that. It becomes a struggle at times, right? Trying to balance that, but and my oldest too, right? Like my oldest constantly telling her, how beautiful she is and knowing her value, her worth, especially because she's dating now. So, doing all that, right? So yeah, man, I
Man,
definitely,
you become a good shot then if she's dating now.
yeah,
You
yeah,
got you a
yeah,
small arsenal, huh? You out here playing Call of Duty on the
yeah,
regular,
yeah,
huh? In
yeah,
real life.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely made sure, I mean, he's a good dude, but just make sure we had a conversation where I stand and what was expected. Same thing for my oldest, because at the end of the day, I think it's very important, right? Like you said, making sure too, as parents, and my wife's actually very conscious of that because she didn't have those tough conversations with her mom. She makes sure that she has it with her daughter, right? Or our daughter, I should say, right? To make sure that hey, she understands this is not okay or this is okay. This is how you should carry yourself. You know, especially now, man. We got Ice Spice and you got Cardi B and you got whoever else is
Sexy
out there
red.
that yeah. That might be the worst one, but yeah, like
Yeah, between her and Sukihana, those are the two worst ones, bro.
yeah, yeah. So so just making sure being conscious of that, man. And so I wanted to ask you then because like you say you have all this information um, in this background, which is a beautiful thing. Like, you have this Nigerian background, but you also have the American, then your wife with the Hispanic culture. Like, you have all these cultures blended in, which is amazing. Like, if you had to sum up your parenting style, and maybe you can, maybe it's a little bit of everything. What would you say is your parenting style then, and how did you get to that place where because well I should say right now because so as I've learned obviously having four kids and they're all in different stages, right? College, elementary, two elementaries, and then preschool. So it's a wide range for me. So with that, it has to change. I have to change my parenting style depending on the child, right? So right now, what would you say your parenting style is? Is it patience? Is it I don't know. Is it at times where you got to bargain with your kids, especially they're little? Hey, I'll give you some gummy bears if you just make sure you don't hit your brother or something, you know what I mean? So like
Right.
what's the parenting style right now that you feel like you're implementing or you're working on or you're doing at the moment?
That's good. I saw once again, social media post recently, and I think it's important. Of course, I'll bring it up. I think multiple times during this conversation, but I think it's important to recognize, especially for I'd say our generation, right? How this cultural moment intersects with the very real realities of where we are now as adults, right? Like this is a wild context compared to what some of the things our parents had to deal with, right? Our kids have access to the world at their fingertips. They can be millionaires just off of YouTube by the time they're at high school, right? So, parenting style. I hear a lot, particularly from kids of immigrants who are now parents, even like I think just minority kids, right? Of a gentle parenting style these days, right? Like, yes, I'm gonna be the gentle parent that my parents weren't with me, right? I'm gonna be more patient. I'm gonna be more understanding. And it's true, right? The saying that, especially if you have multiple kids, each kid is different. Like you got to use a different approach and a different tool for each child. But I think the idea of those things sounds great. And like the heat of the moment comes in, right? Okay, like you really trying my nerves today. So what are really gonna? I think for myself, I think I do fall into that gentle parenting style right now because what I realize with my two kids, obviously, is that yes, you guys are different, definitely. Like with my oldest, if I raise my voice even a little bit, he's like, freaks out. My little one, though, you got to be a little more hands on and direct with him because he's the one who thinks if you're giving him a stern no, he thinks you're joking. He thinks it's playtime. Like, oh, that's okay. Like the other day, homeboy kicked me in the face. Was sitting in my lap, turned around and just kicked me in the face. And I said, "Play the UFC. Stop." Looked at me, kicked me in my chest. Gave him a nice little love tap on the leg. He thought, oh, this is a real game. Tried it again, swung him around, gave him a nice little left tap on the leg again. Then he realized, oh, dad's not playing. Okay, I tap out now. So I definitely think I lean on that gentle parenting style side of things, but also realizing once again, if that is not what's on the forefront of my mind as I approach parenting my children, then I'm automatically going to slip back into my default mode that I know, and that's whatever I was raised with, right? My parents always used to say, and they say it to this day, like, oh, there's no manual for raising kids, which is true. But I think the only manual that we do get is whatever we experienced when we were being raised. So if we live with that mindset of, well, I didn't have a manual, but we're not doing the hard work of building our own manual for each of our kids, you'll be in that position to where when stuff gets hot, you're going to default to the manual that you were raised with and the manual that you experienced, and you just end up repeating the same patterns over and over and over. I had a friend, his daughter just turned one. She's one of my goddaughters. And I remember having a conversation with him. I think, was it before he had his daughter? No, it was before. His wife was pregnant at the time. And I always throw hypotheticals out at my friends and they hate it. So I threw a hypothetical out one day at him, and he was, at the same time I was doing something with one of my kids, and we're on the phone, and he said, "Oh man, if that was me, I would have done blah 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 blah." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, that's just how I was raised, and that's, it is what it is." I said, "How did that work out for you? Like, really think about that." And he sat with it and he was like, "Oh, low key, you're right. Like, I didn't think about it. Like, we just out here repeating trauma." I said, "Absolutely. That's why I'm not out here, dangling my kid up by his ankle and beating the brakes off of him. Well, partially because my oldest is way too light for that, and the bruises will show. But secondly, just because it's just not profitable for
Yeah.
my son to see me as some sort of angry tyrant all the time." To this day, like, me and my dad, our relationship has gotten better now that I'm married and I, have kids. We talk man to man, but I remember this like shift in our relationship one day where, he was talking to me. I think I had been married maybe a year, and he was like, "I'm just trying to be your friend." And I was like, "Dude, we're not friends. Like,
Mm,
I spent the better part of, 20 plus years of my life with you as a disciplinarian, right? And now you're telling me like we're friends. I don't know if it doesn't compute in your head quite yet, but it's going to take work for us to get to a place where we can say that we're friends." Because you spent so much time as a disciplinarian. Am I trying to be my kid's best friend? No, like, they're going to know that, yes, there's a level of respect, and dad will have to be the disciplinarian at times. But I do want them to also know that I'm a safe space, and that they don't need to hide and run from me in terror, because I'm this angry volcano that erupts uh, at will, and then I'm just out here, whooping their tails when they do something that's not right or that I deem isn't right.
yeah. Now I'm gonna give pushback to in the defense of I guess your parents, their style, but not even their style. I would say just like, at least from my experience, I've seen a lot of times when people aren't from like America, right? Their parent style is different, right? Like you said, very disciplinary, very like success driven, a high standard,
Yeah.
right? All that. And so I would ask you, I guess more so since you are Nigerian, and technically I am too, sir. Actually, I am 45%. That's what Ancestry.com told me. Okay,
Oh
so
yeah, see, you are unofficial member of Osa and Abe anyways. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
That's just
yeah,
how it is, because we knew there
so
was something there.
so but with that being said, um, I guess my pushback or play advocate in a sense is like you said, like, hey, you know what? It's not that you're going full blown like I'm going to be this super gentle parent, as far as like I'm not even going to raise my voice or whatever the case is, but um, to for them in their defense, they could be like, hey, there has been a success of, let's just say from your culture, at least for me too. A lot of Nigerians that I have met, they are very successful or doing well for themselves, and they grew
Hmm.
up in that type of structure of a home.
Yep.
So could the pushback be, yeah, you might not like the way that we have did stuff, but it has helped you to get to this point, compared to, hey, if we was maybe more lenient or more soft as the American way of parenting, like overall, everyone has a different style, but overall, right?
Yeah.
Um, you might not have had the same success. What would you say to that?
Yeah. I got a good friend of mine. Um, we had him on Osa and Abe once.
Mm,
I think we got to get him back, but he just recently started his own podcast from the therapist desk. His name is Cedric Hord. He's a
okay.
behavioral therapist out in the Milwaukee area, and just a great dude. And I remember he says this often. He said it when he was on Ocean Abe with us, and like, me and Abe were looking at each other through the camera, like, "Is this happening? Like, bro's killing everybody right now." He
Yeah.
said this. He said, "Your trauma explains you, but it doesn't excuse you."
Mm.
So when I think about my parents and I think about, I'm a huge advocate for context. So context is key. When
Yes.
I look
Yes.
at their context, right? I don't fault them for their context. Like my mother, for example, it's like if I just give a snippet, okay? My mother grew up, was bullied when she was a kid
Mm.
because she couldn't really do as much with all the other kids because she had the sickle cell trait and it affected her ability to be active. So she would get flack for that, pushback for that. Then when she came to this country, comes to this country, leaves a teaching job, all of that, marries my dad. Uh, when she had me, family couldn't come over to help her raise me. So it's just really just her, my dad, and their church community, and she's just out here doing her thing, right?
Mm.
Then you throw on top of that when they finally leave, because my parents had me in Alaska. They lived in Alaska. My dad lived in Alaska for a decade, from Nigeria to Alaska. Don't ask how it happened, but it happened. They move out to Cali, Central California to Bakersfield in the middle of a recession. And
Mm.
my dad, with 3 degrees, couldn't get a job. Finally ends up getting 2 minimum wage jobs. One of them, I think, was working at Taco Bell, right? You got a master's degree and you out here working at Taco Bell just to make ends meet and provide for your
That's crazy.
family. I remember I was 18 months old. My parents told story. 18 months old, my dad almost got deported over some BS.
Mm.
And they told my mom, listen, if you can't take care of the kid, which she wouldn't have been able to because she didn't have all of her papers at the time, um, we're going to put him in the foster care system. I almost ended up in the foster care system.
Wow.
So, like, it's a wild experience and context that my mom dealt with growing up and parenting us. And I realized, like, yeah, these are just things you had to do to survive. So for me, when I reflect back on my parents' parenting journey with me, I just chew the hay and spit out the sticks. The stuff that I
Mm.
know was the result of trauma, the sticks, I'll spit that out. But the stuff that I know was successful, right? The stuff that I know was good hay, like I'll chew that up. So there are things I think from a structural perspective where I'm like, oh no, like we're gonna do this. Like when I look at my son, for example, my oldest, and he's in preschool, and they gave him like homework low key one day, and like it was just automatic for me. Like, nah, we gonna sit down and we're gonna do this. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not gonna let you just be the, well, if you feel like it today, we'll do it. Nah, homie. You're gonna sit on this chair right now and we're gonna trace these letters that make up your name as many times as we need to do for you to get this thing. Because they saying there's
Mm.
stuff you need to pick up. Cool, we're gonna do that. So I firmly believe in context. Context is key, and I do think there is especially I think I wouldn't even say Western culture. I think American culture has a tendency to overcompensate. So if there's something that we thought was not good back in a certain time, we're going to overcompensate and swing the pendulum the opposite direction in an unhealthy manner. And I think that does tend to be what happens with uh, some of this movement we see in more lenient and quote unquote gentle parenting these days is a overcompensation in the wrong direction. When if there's ever a time where we do need to have, I think, some foundations and some good foundations, some good standards, right? It's right now. In this cultural moment we live in. So I think I take the pushback and I say, no, some of that I do think is healthy pushback, things that we do need to have those conversations on,
Mm.
especially as we talk about parenting like our parents in a positive manner, but also, hey, what are some of the things that our parents like? Originally, the original thought that came to me when you first hit me up was uh, parenting through our trauma or not parenting from our trauma. But that could be a little loaded and weighty. But I do think it's more apropos to talk about what does it look like to parent like our parents, both in the positive and the negative.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Honestly, like you said, this could be something where honestly, if we want to dig even deeper, it can get to the nitty gritty for sure, man. And like what you said too is like in this space where we're we're almost like trying to, I guess, like overdo it in a sense with certain things, like you said. So right, we're in a place where, hey, you know what? I don't know. Yeah, I let my child punch me in the face because you know what, it's okay. Right? I let my child say that they're a dog, a cat, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just like all these
Yeah.
outrageous things at times. It's like, well, your child is still a child. As a parent,
Hmm.
we have to
Yep.
help them understand that, right? We have to help set that foundation. Like, why are you letting your child think that they're literally a dog, for example, right? When it's like,
Hmm.
no, that's not what they are. They shouldn't be, now again, I understand kids playing and stuff. I'm not talking about that. Like they really believe like they're an animal, and you're like trying to really just feed into that,
Encourage that.
right? Encourage
Yeah.
that behavior, right? And so,
Yeah.
so it's one of those things. Hey, that's why for me, I'm a big believer. Hey, our kids are still they're still learning. They don't know what they want to do yet, right? So with
Facts.
certain
Yeah.
things, we can't be like, hey, okay, yeah, you know what? I'll just use this as example. Let's say your kid says, hey, they want a tattoo at 13 years old. You're like, yeah, yeah, okay, I'll get you a tattoo. Why not wait? Because now they got a tattoo. Let's just say, I don't know, it said, I don't know, since we're Viking fans, right? uh,
Right.
Kirk Cousins is the GOAT, right? Kirk Cousins is the
Right.
GOAT. Let's say they get a
Yeah,
tattoo.
it says Kirko Chains. Kirko Chains.
Okay,
They get a
Kirk
Kirko
Chains,
Chains
right?
tattoo.
Kirk Chains tattoo. And then they're 19, 20 years old. They're like, why did you let me do this? Right?
Yep. And now
Why?
they're mad at you
Now they're
as a
mad at
result.
you because they're like, why? Well, because you really wanted the tattoo and you thought that. But as the parent, why didn't you just say no? Why didn't you
Yep.
say, hey,
That's it.
if you really want
Hmm.
that, okay, at 18 years old or when you're out of my house, you can get
Yep.
Kirk Chain tattoo all day long, right? Just different things like
Yeah.
that, like you said. So I love the fact that you said like, you got to have that balance, right? You can't go too
Hmm.
because I feel like our generation a lot of times they went the disciplinary route, but they went like sometimes depending on how you grew up, they went to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
extreme. But then we're going on the other side and we're being lenient and we're doing that to the extreme, right?
Yep.
Where oh, it's okay that my 6 year old cussed me out. Like, wait, no, no, it's not. Why are they cussing you out?
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Excuse me.
I, I'm on that note about like, all that freedom and leniency. Freedom without boundaries and responsibility really turns into a prison.
Mm,
Because what you end up doing is you give all this level of choice, and now you've given that, especially for, think about it, for if we're talking kids, right? If we're talking under the age of like, let's say 18, 19, right? You've given this individual so much choice to where they are now a prisoner of their own choice to say, oh man, like I got this option, I want to do this, and that. I've now, for example, if we use your dog illustration, right?
yeah.
I've now given you the freedom to say you're a dog, and you identify as a dog. I'm gonna buy you dog food. I'm gonna dress you up as a dog. I'm gonna let you walk on four paws. All of that stuff, right? I
Yeah.
give you that freedom, but no boundary or responsibility that comes with that. So when now I've regressed psychologically because I've now become more feral because I think I'm a dog and I have all uh, these poor habits and behaviors, I now set myself back to where when I reach a level of adulthood, so to speak, and I'm supposed to be doing fill in the blank, right? Maybe going to school, being able to have a decent, sleep schedule, all these things, you've now set me back and put me in a place of mental, emotional, and sociological incarceration
Mm,
because you didn't do the job of giving me some sort of guardrails and boundaries. So the fact that we talk about, well, it's leniency and it's freedom and I'm giving them agency. No, it's really actually said it without any sort of boundary or responsibility that comes with it to understand that there are consequences. You've really now given this person the tools to build a prison cell of their own doing.
woo. Well, this dude came with some heat today, brother. With the kids and everything harassing you today, brother. Like came with the heat, man. I definitely. I was gonna actually say you had any gems to give before we got ready to close, but shoot, you just dropped the mic with that one. You you
You
you
funny.
know what I mean? Just drop the mic with that one, man. But before we close out, man, like you mentioned the podcast and stuff, and just let the people know where they. Obviously, you about to start back up, but just let them know where they can find you and the different things you got going on, man. With that,
Yes, sir. Yeah. So the let's see, I'm on Instagram, first name, last name, so osahan.obazwaye. If you type in Osahan, I'm probably the first one that's gonna come up. Even though there are a lot of Osahans out there in this world, I'll probably be the first one that comes up. I don't know why. and I ain't even need a blue check to get it happen. When we're talking about podcasting, I got the OSANA podcast from my boy Abraham. That is anywhere you get your podcast. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's Osa Abe. Yeah, Osa Abe podcast, all one word, and it should come up. Or you can look up I don't remember what our nickname is right now. The Sultans of Suya. There you go. That's our nickname
Yeah.
right now. Don't ask me what's going on with us. That's the only way you find us on Twitter. And then we will be relaunching the OSANA podcast in the month of March to coincide with the NCAA basketball tournament, March Madness. It's gonna be crazy. So stay tuned. Your boys will be back along with our co-conspirator, Mr. Watson, aka Baba Funke. So stay tuned. We definitely will get Chris on, not Chris, Sean. There's another Chris we're talking to about getting on, but we for sure going to get you on, Sean, especially as the playoffs come around,
Yeah,
because I know
definitely.
it's going to be disappointing for you when your Clippers don't win the championship this year. It's okay. It's going to be okay. You know what I mean? But we definitely want to get you on to at least show some love and support
This dude's
from
being
the second best team in
disrespectful,
LA.
but that's okay. I'm gonna stall you out. You know what I mean? We gonna be on the positive. I don't want to slander you today. So,
Wow.
but
Wow.
but no, definitely, guys, check them out. I'm also going to I'll make sure I'll tag them on YouTube. I'll make sure when I
Bet.
post it on Instagram, Facebook that I put their handlers as well, so you guys can check them out.
Yes, sir.
Um, and make sure. But again, man, we'll definitely have to do this again, just because, man, you dropped so many gems, man, and I definitely appreciate your time. I know you was, like I said, I know you got the family, I know you got the little ones, and you still was able to come through, man, which I definitely don't take for granted. But yeah, guys, so
Nah,
make sure
yeah,
if
thanks
you
for having
like.
me.
Oh yeah, anytime, man, anytime, bro. But make sure y'all like, make sure y'all subscribe, tell a friend, and remember, you don't always have to be perfect, but you always have to be present. We'll see you on the next one.